Okay, I think we have all the technology ready to go, and although I appreciated the calm, relaxing music, we probably need to call the meeting to order and get going with our workshop today. Good morning, everyone. Calling the workshop of the Board of Regents of Del Mar College District to order at 10:01 a.m. on Tuesday, March 8th. I'm going to call roll to establish our quorum. Dr. Villarreal?
Here.
Dr. Turner?
Here.
Dr. Adami?
Here.
Ms. Averett?
Here.
Mr. Garza?
Here.
And Mr. Bennett?
Here.
I'm Carol Scott. We have a quorum and can conduct business. Would you all please join me in a moment of silence? Thank you. Dr. Villarreal, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And would you please join me in reading the Del Mar College Vision Statement? Del Mar College will be the premier choice for life-changing educational opportunities provided by responsive, innovative faculty and staff who empower students to improve local and global communities. Thank you very much. Del Mar College is streaming live audio and video from our official Board of Regents meetings on the college's website in real time, with the exception of portions of the meeting considered closed session by statute. We now have the opportunity at the start of this workshop for any general public comments for items not on the agenda. Is there anyone for general public comment? Not seeing anyone. We will start with our first item on our workshop agenda this morning, which is related to our 2022 redistricting project. And I'm going to ask Mr. Augie Rivera to bring us up to speed and introduce any of our guest presenters and consultants today.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, Regents and all here. As you continue your redistricting process, I wanted to just give you a quick recap of where you are to date. Again, this, as we've explained before, every 10 years as a result of the U.S. Census, you are required to examine and study your single-member districts to determine whether they are still balanced so that you can meet with the constitutional principle of one person, one vote, as well as other legal principles that apply. You have engaged the firm of Bickerstaff Heath out of Austin to help you with this work. Back in December, you'll recall you received an initial assessment from Mr. David Mendez, a partner in the firm, who, after looking at the population changes, reported to you that, in fact, your districts were out of balance, given the population changes that had occurred over the last 10 years and needed to be reworked. In that regard, you all at that same meeting adopted guidelines for how you were going to conduct your assessment, what principles you were going to follow, and also how you were going to develop a proposal to present to the public, as well as how you were going to solicit public input on this. At the February board meeting, you'll recall that Mr. Kabi Caputo, who is here with you today, and I'm going to ask Mr. Caputo to go ahead and come on up because he's going to be facilitating your next step discussion on this. But at the February board meeting, Mr. Caputo and his staff presented you with a couple of proposals that you all looked at, deliberated, provided some excellent feedback and input on, and gave some guidance to Mr. Caputo as to where you should go, where you wanted to go next. He has done that, provided in your board packet that was also included with the agenda that was published to the public last week, is in fact a proposal, a new plan, a Plan C. He's also given you a lot of the number breakdowns and demographics so you can see how all of that works. But so at today's meeting, what you're doing is you're deliberating the next proposal, providing input, and again, you continue to have any option at your disposal. You can adopt a plan, ask for a rework of another plan, start over. You're within your prerogatives to do that. Nothing has been decided yet at this point. So With that as a brief overview, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Caputo, who will continue the conversation with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Augie. Madam Chair, Regents, Mr. President, thank you for having us down again. As Augie said, when we came in February, we had a couple of different options, Plan A and Plan B. Y'all kind of liked Plan B better, and then tweaked it with some guidance to really try to not necessarily compartmentalize, but keep as many of the school districts in a single district as you could get them, just for, voter ease and things like that. So we did that here with y'all. We went back and looked at the numbers a little bit. I've tweaked it just a little bit to keep the demographic numbers more similar to the current plan. But we did manage to keep Calallen, Tolosa, Midway, and West Oso are all in District 3. District 4 has all of Flower Bluff except there's a tract of land that's in District 5, but apparently it's not inhabited and isn't going to be inhabited. So it's not going to confuse any voters there. And then within the sort of the city center itself, District 2 has given up some territory to District 1 to get District 1's numbers where they need to be, because it gave up a lot in the move to the school district boundary lines. And District 5 is pretty compact. District 2 is fairly compact, as you would think, because they're the ones kind of in the middle. And, that's the plan as it is. As I said last time, I don't know the communities of interest down here. I don't really know the neighborhoods that well. So if in moving a few things around to get the numbers looking better, if we completely botched, this neighborhood shouldn't have been cut, or that precinct needs to stay with this precinct, we can do that here today. I have my associate GIS specialist, Cameron Arsenault, is online. He's got the plan up. And, there's an infinite number of ways to do this. So if you don't like the direction we're headed, we could totally scrap it and start over. We can tweak this. You guys could say this is fine, and we'd proceed to the next step, which would be public notice and education and a public hearing, and then ultimately adoption.
Thank you, Mr. Caputo. Please note for the agenda that Ms. Hutchison just joined us. So I wanted to this is pretty free form this morning. As we go through this process, I know we had some questions last time from Mr. Kelly, who can't be with us this morning, and Mr. Garza had some input. But after looking through it, whether it's your district or not, do we have any feedback on the maps that were sent? Let's start with District 1, because that's the one at the top of the agenda.
I don't really have any issues with the maps. I think the maps are all right. The question, the concern that I have, if you look at the total population and then you look at the voting age population, we've still got, I'm going to say, some smaller numbers in districts 1 and 3.
Yes.
And the concern that I have is we're using the 2020 census. We're already in 2022.
Yeah.
And so again, I know that probably in the last couple of years, dating 2021 and 2022, we've already experienced some, I'm going to say, population shift, going to the areas that are more attractive in terms of District 4 and District 5. And that trend is probably going to continue between now and 2030. And so if our numbers were closer in terms of either voting population or population, right now the difference between, say, for instance, 1 and 3 and the largest number, which is 2, in terms of voting population, is 5,000, 6,000 population. And I just think starting out, I mean, we may be inside of the allowed deviation. Yes. Right? But we're going to be way outside of that deviation by the time we get to 2030. And so we're going to have a challenge in 2030 trying to get those numbers back into where they need to be. Yeah, I mean, we're going to find a big fight between us here on the Regents right now, but I just think 2030 could
down the road, yeah,
could be a different story.
So one of the things we've done is we sort of increased the population in 2 because it is kind of landlocked and isn't going to grow very much. 4 still has a substantial amount of population. It's actually the biggest by a little bit. So if there was a desire to put more population into 1 or 3, you know, we could explore options for doing that to balance those numbers out. But that's, you know, strictly, you know, everybody's kind of looking in a crystal ball trying to see what's going to happen.
Well, my crystal ball says that there won't be a lot of growth in District 1, not in numbers. We may have,
Yeah.
you know, a repurposed building here or there, but it's not going to be huge numbers. District 3 has a lot of opportunity for growth, I believe, in the area around West Oso.
That's what I've heard, yeah.
But in District 2, of course, I mean, again, there's not likely to be any growth, but I also see not likely to see some, I'm going to say, some population shift out of the district like you will see in District 1. Okay, so I just think starting out, I think that the numbers in District 1 need to be at least close to what some of the larger numbers are in the other
Okay.
districts. Okay.
I have
That's
a
just-
comment.
Yeah.
So I've been working with District 4 on the city redistricting, and one of the things that they did was pull precinct 65 to bring down my numbers and bring down the numbers of District 4, because I noticed that District 4 still has a huge population, and
Yeah.
we're going to have to reduce something, because I'm on 60, yeah. So 65 was given to District 2, I believe, on the city maps that we've been working on. So just to kind of shift a little of the population, because they're expecting more population growth in District 4 as the future goes with building on the island and development in that area, also in Flower Bluff. So, because I think we're going to have we'll have a problem in 10 years, but that'll be in 10 years when they'll have to, yes, you know. But I just worry about the numbers too, being so high in District 4, and that they're not really quite evened out a little bit. I
So-
hate to lose, 65 is right there on,
There's a, yeah.
but I know the city had pulled it from on their redistricting maps.
Well, 65 is a really big block in terms of population. Like you see, if we just move that into 2, it overpopulates 2.
Yeah, and then they
You
shifted
have-
into 3.
You have to take some precincts from 2 and move them into 1. In
Yeah,
order to make the
Yeah,
numbers
that's
right.
what they did on the city. They just kind of shifted a little bit that way.
right.
And I don't know where anybody lives. I'm not picking on anybody. I'm not trying to bump anybody off. I'm just
I mean, I
suggesting
don't mind.
that
I,
I'm okay taking, 2 or 3 precincts that do not affect any regions or anybody
Right.
that might be interested in serving.
So we
them.
could look at putting
region.
65 into 2 and then
they just shifted.
having 1 take up a bit more of 2. Cameron, can you pull the map down a little bit, move it south? I want to see the northern part of where 1 and 2 come together. Yeah, so I mean, there's opportunities there.
That brought it down.
Is that District 42, how many, what sort of population are we looking at in there?
Precinct 42.
Precinct 42.
No, yeah.
Sorry, yeah. 545, but the reason that we haven't moved that before is that we have, our data shows that the incumbent for District 2 lives right here. So if we move that into District 1, we'd
Oh.
be moving the incumbent out of the district.
I didn't understand anything of what he just said.
I'm sorry. So,
District 42 is where one of the incumbents lives, and one of
Oh, gotcha.
our criteria was not to
Okay.
draw people out of their districts.
No. All right. That explains why it didn't shift. Okay.
So we could look at shifting,
94, 95,
yeah, scroll down a little bit there, Cameron.
which,
Well, just to alleviate District 4, I mean, I don't mind, but I know we'll.
Yeah, I would look
we'll
at
have a
maybe
We'll have a
95.
problem, though, in 10 years.
It's actually still within balance, just doing that. Then to get 4 down, I guess, yeah, move 65. We've kind of split precinct 92. But I know that's a very populous area as well. And it probably gets to where we'd need to push some more out of 2 and into 1.
2 is already still out of balance again. I believe this part of 92 doesn't have too many people. Let me see.
It was pretty good sized area, as I recall. Yeah, now what we could do is start splitting the election precincts instead of just using them, because they're kind of big. They're the like Duplos of this. If we got down to more of the Lego size, it's easier.
Yeah, in this part of 92, there is about 1,500 people.
So if you took all 92 and put it in District 2,
Well, along with 65, that would require some
well,
pretty.
no, we'll have to keep that, right? Because of 64, because we won't be able to, I don't think, unless you're thinking about splitting 65.
And we could go over and look at like 71 or 94. I think someone
Or,
said.
well, if you
94.
took 92, maybe 120, that would be giving it a block a little bit, right?
I'll
I
just
hate
do
to
it that way.
lose 120, though.
Yeah, and at some point we have to.
You're going to have to reduce, though, you're going to have to reduce District 4. You're not going to have a choice.
So do those. And then we have to look at what we have that we could move.
As a general rule, I would like to not split voting precincts, if at all possible.
Yes,
I
well,
just think,
that's why I'm saying they took all 92, then that
Right.
whole precinct would be part.
That's in our criteria, so that does shift it around. We're actually within balance there, just barely. But it hasn't really gotten a population into 1, as Regent Garza's talked about. So what we need to do is look at the neighboring blocks. What about there's that kind of, is it 81, 43, and 75 up there more in the central city that are in 3 right now?
Oh, yes. I think the reason I had those where they were because they have a significant Hispanic population. We can go ahead and move those.
Yeah. I remember another thing we don't want to do is we don't want to like build a district with so much Hispanic population that it looks like they're being packed in there, so they're not influencing other election areas. But all right, so that's way out of whack. 5 needs population. I guess 7 or 3. I mean, 71
5 is great. 5 looks good.
would go to the 3. That helps, but we're still wildly out.
So if we can just maybe go back and take,
Not 75, maybe. Or I'm sorry, just 75.
just so you have how we do it.
Yeah.
Is that better?
There we go.
No, it didn't go.
And then this is what the voting population looks like.
So that underpopulates 3, 4, 5 a little bit, not as much. 5's actually about even.
Still have to move some other boxes into 3,
Yeah.
and possibly 5 or.
Is it better to overpopulate or underpopulate?
It kind of depends on your ability to determine where the growth is going to be. It's good if an area is going to grow to underpopulate it a little bit.
Well, they're predicting District 4 to grow and District
5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
5. So,
So we should try to underpopulate 4 and 5.
And
and
4 is
anticipate-
under a little bit now, not by much, and 5 is, like I
oh, we're
said,
still
about
within the,
perfect.
margin, right?
So we could shift some, because 3's under by quite a bit now.
Oh, no.
We have to somehow effectuate a shift of some of 5 into 3,
Into 3.
except 2's in the way.
Let me take a look.
We've got that weird shaped block, the 114 that has a tail on it.
Yeah, that could be moved into 3.
Yeah. So that puts 3 at just a little under. Yeah, see, they just get to be such big chunks.
Yeah.
Oops. And we haven't really done anything with 5. We haven't really overpopulated 2 at this point much either. So what about, there's a block 32 there that's in 5. Could that go into 2? It's a little too big. Yeah, these blocks in the census precincts, excuse me, the voting precincts in the center of town, very dense. So it doesn't look like it would be that much, and then all of a sudden the numbers are all cattywampus again. Is there something we could pull out of 4 and put into 5?
You already pulled. Don't pull me anymore.
What about that? What about that 126 down there?
I prefer
That one
that you not take 126.
I think that messes up the school district boundary a little bit.
We could try again. Let me pull up the.
Yeah.
That's that's the veterans area. I prefer to keep that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can potentially try and move 65 back into 2 and then 32 back into 5. See if that'll.
Okay. So 2 is growing and shrinking in this in this little process.
Okay, so now 4 is
4 needs to pick up something.
yeah.
Yeah, what about 17?
Too much. Actually, hold on.
Yeah, it's just the blocks we're moving have such high
I
density.
know,
that
yeah.
It's difficult to just move a little bit. Yeah, we're way out of balance there.
Yeah, now 4 is still like about even. So it's not underpopulated, and 5 is way.
Whoa.
I guess give 5 back 17.
Yes, you have to.
And then 4.
What happened to 4? I thought you were just going to take 92. My numbers. Did you take another one?
Yeah, I tried trading, putting 65 to 2 again.
Okay.
Well, that balances it out.
But
It doesn't really, and 3 and 4 are underpopulated there. 5 is still a little, it's just even. But 5 is where I think a lot of the growth is expected, so
Yeah.
I just don't know a way to shift some population out of 5 that doesn't move, 3,000 people at once.
Right.
116 or,
Yeah, see, maybe,
He's gonna try 115, I guess.
yeah, that works. 5 is so unbalanced.
Well,
Two
we're,
needs to-
we're a little
I
over the
wouldn't-
deviation now.
Yeah, 2 needs to shift a little bit more.
There's just very few small blocks.
So you took 65. That's fine.
Yeah, I can put 65 back into 4 and move something else into 4.
It seems like that 92 and 90 areas, is that preferable to take out of 4?
92 and 90, yeah, that would be.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so keep 65, but
yeah, I prefer to keep 65. What?
I mean, this is moving pretty quickly, honestly. It's a little difficult to keep up, but, I mean, 65 could go into 2. It certainly is right along Ocean Drive and like neighborhoods, and the population is very similar.
Yeah, the city took 65.
Yeah,
But
I mean, I
looking
think
at the
65
numbers, my
could
numbers
easily-
went down a lot.
65 could
Right.
easily belong in District 2.
So then you have to take something out of District 2 and put it in 5.
I don't think the city's plan that the council drew did not take 65. I think there've been other plans presented that took 65. But I'm not positive. I didn't have just a big map here.
Big map. I think that was.
I know at the city, we cut 92 along Airline Drive, which is what we had done here as well.
Yeah. So for right now, this does, like 5 is really underpopulated, 2 is pretty overpopulated, which I think was like,
Part of the
something
goal.
y'all said was desirable.
Is there any way to,
65.
What happens if you take 15, though, out of 2 and put it in 5 in this
Yeah.
scenario?
And it's a lot closer to even.
it definitely plumps up 1. It's taken a little bit out of 2, so 2 is now basically flat, even, as is 5. So the underpopulated ones are 3 and 4 at this stage.
And while we don't have any crystal balls, I do think we think there will be some growth in 4.
Oh, yeah.
right, for
I mean,
sure,
I'm okay
in the
with
next
that.
10
That's-
years, and possibly in 3 as well.
Yeah. Can you zoom out a little bit? Excuse me, can you zoom out a little bit, Cameron? Yeah, I can't figure out a way to underpopulate 5 and 4 and 3 at the precinct level.
Cameron, can you dismiss the map layer manager so we can see the numbers?
Oh, yes, sorry about that.
Thank you. those of us who don't live by voter precinct numbers, when we added in on District 2, what looks like that little point now, is that Pope Place? Am I looking at that correctly? That little point?
On 2. Can you zoom in there? I think it's the precinct 90.
92 and 90, yeah.
92, yeah. Does any of that look
okay.
familiar?
That's along Alameda around Windsor Park.
Yeah.
Okay. Because Windsor's on the south side of Alameda.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Just try to get my bearings straight.
Yeah, no, it's hard, especially when the map's moving around a whole bunch, but that's why I like to kind of zoom out for a minute and look at it and then think about where you want to look at more closely and kind of zoom back in.
It would make sense if we could pull 65 into it from a community of interest standpoint, but I don't know how we do that without. Correct, yeah.
Too far off.
I think to do that, it's going to require some heavy shifting on the other side of 2 into 1. Which is, it's not impossible, but it's,
I mean, do we feel like 1 is going to grow? Because if we don't, then that may be something we want to look at.
yeah.
And there was talks about like North Beach growing. How much growth do you think North Beach will have in the next 10 years with the new bridge and their renovation ideas?
There's not a lot of residential
Yeah.
area there that's not already
Don't think so.
residential.
Yeah. that's-
I mean, we can, it looks nicer if 65 is in 2, but it's hard to maneuver around without really chopping 2 up on the other side. But we can scroll over a little bit, Cameron, let's look at that, and zoom out some.
So what are you looking at?
So put that 65 into 2.
And give me back 92 and 90.
Well, I was going to leave it there for now.
Yeah.
Okay, so we need to get population back into 4.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we tried to put 17 into 4, but then when we did that, it underpopulated 5.
So.
Right, and then 5 would have to go, maybe take that 114? But is that getting into a school district boundary line there? I don't think so.
So what did you give me? 119?
We gave precinct 17 to District 4.
17.
Moved into District 4.
Okay. But then 5 is 2 and 5.
Right, but I think if we take 114 into 5, unfortunately it has that tail, but. Nope, not enough.
No.
Yeah, we can do 119.
Well, let me make sure.
I don't know if that failed.
It made it work, but now they're both like even.
It made 4 and 5 basically within a couple hundred people of exactly the right size. 2 is not, 2 is actually underpopulated a little bit, so we kind of lost the, let's overpopulate 2. 3 is nice, and 1 is nice.
But when you say underpopulated, it's just by a couple of hundred people now.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, but yeah, I mean,
That's fine.
it's not
one of the-
thousands.
Yeah, but one of the goals that was set was to try to get more population into
Yeah.
two, and that has less than the original starting point for today. Okay, so what about if we gave 119 back and took 90 instead?
90, yeah, 90. That would be 4 if you would give it back, if you did 90, it would go back to 4.
So you mean
Yeah,
give
you can't.
17 back to 5?
Yeah, just go back to where it was, I guess.
Undo.
At least I could be looking at it.
So now 5 is even, and 4 is still a little bit underpopulated.
Yeah, and I wish there was a
So
way
two
to just
underpopulated.
trade a little bit between 4 and 5.
Yeah, I know, but all these precincts are, I mean, we could go down in here, like give one of these to 4 for 5.
That's
So I
where the
think
growth,
with the new split, they might not be too big.
today, but that's where the growth is happening.
Yeah.
Give this giant whole chunk to 5, but that would mean that this area would be part of District 4. I think that would be totally disconnected from it, so.
Say that again, I didn't understand.
Oh, sorry about that. I was saying that we could theoretically move this into 4, but that would include these areas right here that would be totally separated from the rest of 4.
Oh, yeah. That doesn't make much sense.
Can we go back to putting 119 in 5 and I think we had 90 into,
So
because I think that's where we were balanced.
17, you'll need to shift back to 4. Now you're,
Yeah, it made 5 way too big.
yeah,
Okay, is
17
that where
will
we
need to go
were?
back to 4.
It's nicely balanced.
Okay. Can we
just-
capture that
Let's
one?
save that for now as
Please.
Plan D.
Oh, right?
To explode, please.
Sounds good.
And then we still might tweak it, but let's save this as Plan D, or whatever we're on.
Can you do a save so we don't lose this one,
Thank you.
Cameron?
Sure thing, yeah.
Big picture.
Your district's gonna grow for sure.
Thanks, Cameron.
No problem.
All right.
So it keeps 5 flat, essentially. There's,
It's got 4 and 5 flat, basically.
right, 4 and 5 basically flat. 3's a little bit down, 2 is a little bit down.
And 1 is a little bit big.
That map should meet,
Yeah.
the way it is right now, that map should make it easier to be able to transfer some precincts 10 years from now from 3 or 2. 3 particularly is what I'm thinking. And then you can transfer some precincts over from 5 to 3. And we should, I don't think you should have any arm wrestling needed in order to be able to do that in my crystal ball.
Yeah.
Kavi, I'm sorry I don't have it with me, but looking at this Plan D, do we know how it compares to our current racial demographics as a percent of voting age population?
Cameron, can you pull up the demographic pages from the initial assessment? I think it's pretty good. I think 2 is down a little bit in terms of Hispanic population.
I'll do voting age population. Sorry.
Wrong way. Oh, there we go.
Looks like
So yeah, two
the
is,
standing population. 2 and 3 both go down somewhat, and then 1 goes up.
yeah. And it's okay for 3 to come down because it was pretty heavily identifiable. I wish there was a way to just move between 1 and 2. Does anybody, since y'all do elections here, does anybody see
Wow.
major problems with that alignment?
District 5, wow.
Yeah, it'd be easier to, as I said, we could fine tune this some by chopping into the election precincts, but I don't think we've done that in this plan, so.
I mean, I think as we move forward, I think I'm most comfortable with this one, and it does at least keep the Hispanic voting age population 60%,
Yeah.
at least 60% in those 3 districts.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something, as a thumbnail, that's a number that gets thrown around a lot. I don't know the specifics of how it would work in your system, but. Well,
Can I ask one more question? Is there a way to compare what we have right now in terms of the racial demographics now?
yeah, that's what that is. The yellow table.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was looking down below and not here.
Yeah, the yellow table on top is the current
Thank you.
boundaries
Let's do focus on the
with
little
the
part.
census data, and then the table below it that always moves is.
Yeah, they're not presented the same way, so.
Yeah. And the colors are, I've complained about this. The color for voting age and the sheets we print out and send to you have that kind of yellowish. And then on this chart, the table in the middle is yellowish, but it's total population, not voting age. Apparently it's something the software does. So we can finalize this one and send it down, and y'all can ponder it. See if there's anything else we need to tweak, or, put it out for public consumption too, and see what the public says about it.
So with that thought in mind, Mr. Rivera, our next steps would be a public hearing on a specific plan in April.
Correct.
Okay, so if we were to move Plan D forward as a draft plan for public input, what does that process look like between now and our April meeting?
We would put it up on our website, probably have a dedicated website. Mr. Caputo's already offered to provide sort of FAQs so that the public can have access to it, publicize it. We'd get together with Ms. Williams to do that. Maybe even have a means of, for the public to provide email comments over the next 30 days. You would schedule a public hearing, because that you're required to do. Is that correct, Mr. Caputo?
It's not necessarily legally required. You need to have something where there's a public ability to speak to the board about it.
And that's conventionally done through a public hearing?
Yes.
So you could set it for public hearing at your next board meeting, next workshop, whatever. You can do it on the same day.
Sure.
And depending on the input then at that point, of course, it'd be dependent on what you get back, feedback-wise. you can incorporate that input, or, I mean, if you get thumbs up, you could also approve it conceivably at that meeting as well.
So given where we are today on Tuesday, the 8th, and our next board meeting where the public hearing would be held is on Tuesday, the 12th of April, so we would have maybe a week for you to do all of your data, or even shorter than that.
It'll be done by the end of this week, for sure.
Into this week.
Yeah.
And so with Lorette and Augie's help, we would have that website up at some point next week and give folks then 3, almost 4 solid weeks to provide input. And we could take input up to the day of if we had to.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, and then the public hearing, you'd
And-
actually,
Right, publicize, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
you'd have the opportunity to get input at that point, too.
That's a pretty typical approach.
Is there any discomfort with what we've just laid out? Everybody online with what we've just laid out?
Can you close the 2020 data there, Cameron, so we can kind of look at the map?
The concept would be that we have the public hearing, and we could potentially adopt in April if there's no changes, so there would be discussion and possible action. And according to our internal timetable, if there was significant input and we wanted to make additional changes on the 12th of April, we could then delay voting, a final vote until May.
Right?
Yeah,
Okay.
you're still within
So we
the
still
time-
have lots of flexibility.
Yeah, you're still within the timetable there.
You're ahead of schedule at this point from what we originally thought about, because I think we were talking about finalizing in May, so you're ahead of schedule.
Good work, team, good work.
Cameron, could you put the school district boundaries up real quick, just so they're there? Because that was a factor we were looking at.
I'm sorry, the what?
Just the school district boundaries. Just so we can see that we didn't mess up that stated goal of keeping the school districts other than CCISD in their own districts. Okay?
And Regents, let me just again note for you that this continues to be an iterative process, very much so. That's why I started it off by saying nothing's been voted on, nothing has been locked in. If Mr. Garza has a thought that occurs to him later tonight, no, my God, seriously, it's.
I'm good.
You're still, you know, and the fact that you're doing this as you wanted to, you know, transparently out in the open. You know, it's not easy, I know, to look at this detail work, but again, everybody can see what you're doing and that you're coming at it with good faith in accordance with the principles and guidelines that you adopted, so you're on track.
Any other comments for today's workshop? Then I think if we can proceed as we've discussed, we're in good shape.
Okay?
All right, thank you all. I think
Well,
that's-
thank you all.
Thanks, Cameron.
No problem, thank you.
It's always interesting doing this, so.
Well, I think it beats map colors and paper maps that we used to have to do, so.
I've done it that way too. It's very, and this is very much better. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Caputo.
Thank you all.
Safe travels back. All right, with nothing else related to our redistricting plan, we'll move on in our workshop with item number 2, which is discussion related to our strategic plan, our regular key performance indicators workshop on goals 3 and 4. Dr. Escamilla, do you have some introductory remarks?
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Christina Wilson will lead us off in discussion. And it looks like some of our team members are coming in as we speak. So regarding the goals for 3 and 4 of the college's strategic plan, just a couple of notes. The plan kicked off in 2019. It goes to 2024. We are anticipating some changes and tweaks and adjustments as a good plan should experience, or as good planners should experience. And so we're in a good place right now. We've got a few years with most student-centric plan that we've had in a very long time at the college, and to make those adjustments will be quite exciting. And they are based off of the entire college's input. And so that being said, Dr. Christina, kick us off this morning with goals 3 and 4.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Good morning, Regents. It's very good to see you today, and we'll be leading us in a discussion of our strategic plan. Our strategic plan, entitled Aspire, Engage, Achieve, was adopted in September 2019, as Dr. Escamilla just mentioned, and includes 6 overarching goals. Each of the goals has established KPIs and objectives. The college also has an operational plan with KPI thresholds, targets, and institutional strategies put into place to support the attainment of the strategic plan. During this workshop, we'll be focusing on goals 3 and 4 of the strategic plan. Goal 3 focuses on academic preparedness and student learning, and Goal 4 focuses on learning environments. Since the time the plan was first adopted, so much has changed. That's to be expected given that we are now approaching the halfway point of this plan. But what was not expected was the worldwide pandemic, which forced us to transform our services to the best as we could, with no roadmap, no guidebook, to meet the needs of our students. Today, we will be discussing our KPIs, thresholds, targets, trends, and strategies in place to meet our goals in the context of the unprecedented times we have recently faced. I will be joined by my colleagues in discussing these topics this morning. Quite a few of you have sat through these workshops before, so the next couple of slides will be a repeat for many of you, but I'd like to get started with discussing and providing some context to what you'll be looking at. For each KPI, we will review our most recent data, what we can call our data snapshot. Each KPI has an identified threshold and target. Thresholds are the college's acceptable levels of achievement, what you could call our minimum targets. Thresholds that are not met indicate that additional attention and/or resources are needed to address this aspect of student success. Targets are the college's aspirational objectives for improvement, what you can call our stretch goals. So we set a baseline for ourselves, and also we seek to improve every year. When reviewing the data snapshots, you'll see that they're also color-coded. Green meaning that the threshold or target was met, and red meaning that the threshold or target was not met. I also like to provide some context in regards to what you'll see in our comparison groups. For many of these slides, we'll be looking at our statewide comparison average for all community colleges, and in some cases, we'll also be looking at our large colleges peer group. That's what Del Mar College is considered within the state of Texas. We are a large college. The Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board groups us based on our enrollment. The fall 2019 enrollment for our large colleges peer group ranged from 8,000 students at Navarro College to 19,000 students at Blinn College. So while it's important to recognize that it's valuable to compare ourselves to this peer group, there are so many things that differentiate us even within our peer group that enrollment patterns alone cannot differentiate. So we realize that on some occasions you look at the large colleges and you say, well, Del Mar College is so different from all of these. Yes, it's true, but we provide this information in order to provide really necessary context so you see how we compare. Let's get started with Goal 3. By pursuing this goal, we seek to accelerate student attainment of academic preparedness standards and ensure optimal levels of learning in all instructional delivery formats. Today, we will be separating our discussions into 2 parts, the first focusing on academic preparedness and the second on student learning. Academic preparedness focuses on ensuring that students in our credit programs meet college readiness standards and are eligible to earn college-level credits. During this portion of the presentation, we'll be discussing the Texas Success Initiative, reviewing KPIs, and describing Del Mar College's strategies to impact our goals and targets. Let's start with a discussion of the Texas Success Initiative, also commonly referred to as TSI. The purpose of the TSI program is to guide Texas public institutions of higher education in determining whether entering non-exempt students are ready for entry-level college courses, specifically in the areas of reading, writing, and mathematics. The state requires the administration of a testing instrument known as the Texas Success Initiative Instrument, or the TSIA. All students entering who are pursuing a credit program and do not meet exemption criteria must take the TSIA exam. Del Mar College offers the TSIA exam through our testing center, and many dual credit students take the TSIA at their high schools, which serve as testing sites. Students who are not exempt and do not meet one or more of the established benchmarks of the TSIA requirements are required to participate in developmental education supports prior to or in conjunction with college-level coursework. So we'll be talking about developmental education next. So as I mentioned, we are required, students pursuing credit-based courses are required to take the TSIA exam. For students who do not meet those benchmarks, they must take developmental education. Developmental education can be provided in a variety of formats. Our instructional departments have the freedom to implement and develop our developmental education curriculum within the structure of our state's requirements. Traditionally, students are enrolled in course-based programs in reading, writing, and math that are designed to prepare them for college-level coursework. Students may also receive support through a co-requisite model, which is relatively new to us here at Del Mar College, in which students are concurrently enrolled in a developmental education course and a college-level course in the same subject area. Non-course-based options, also referred to as NCBOs, are a type of intervention that includes learning approaches designed to address a student's specific weaknesses while preparing the students for college-level work. Basic academic skills education may also be provided through continuing education programs of various formats. One really important thing to note, and we need to discuss, it has changed since the last time we looked at this data, is the fact that there is now a new TSIA assessment instrument known as the TSIA-2, which was launched in January of 2021. The previous assessment instrument had been in place since 2013. The new instrument incorporates a new scoring scale and benchmarks, and we are just starting to understand how this new test is impacting the number and percentage of our students that require developmental education. So as you can imagine, this is quite complicated, considering that many of our students endured, especially those that were in the later stages of high school, experienced that during the pandemic, and at the same time, a new statewide test was issued. A few more things about this test. The test integrates reading and writing into one test. Students take a separate test for math, and students who test low on either test are directed to complete a diagnostic assessment, which results in a profile that describes their proficiency in each category. So, new test. Let me tell you what we know about this new test so far. I'd like to share some information with you that was shared by the coordinating board. 57% of first-time in college students, referred to as FTICs, entered college ready in the fall of 2019. So this was under the prior TSIA assessment instrument and before the pandemic. This is an overall percentage that includes both community colleges and universities. 37% of FTIC community college students entered college ready at that time. We have just some initial outcomes, some initial, very preliminary outcomes that the state has shared regarding the TSIA-2. Approximately 288,000 English, language arts, and reading tests have been administered, and 300,000 math test administrations have been administered across the state. So this includes everyone who has taken the test: university students, community college students, students in the high schools. So out of all of those test administrations, for the English, language arts, and reading test, approximately 20% of students are testing college ready. In math, approximately 22% are testing college ready. This is very, very preliminary data, and what this data said is that they are undergoing a validity study for this new test, and they expect to release the results this summer. When the prior test was first introduced, they did something very similar. They conducted a validity study. They came back, they adjusted the test a little bit, adjusted the scores a little bit, but in the meantime, they're seeking to learn about the impact of this test, and we are as well on our students. I'll pause here for any questions.
I have a couple of questions. So was this taken, like over, are these the 20% and the 22%, is that for last year, or is that just for cumulative, can't say it, there we go, of years put together? Because that's kind of alarming that it's only 20% are college ready and 22% are college ready. So are we going to need to adjust our college to accommodate remedial courses?
My understanding of what this data shows is this is all test administrations. Please keep in mind that this test was launched in January of 2021, and I believe, let me take a look, this was presented in October of 2021. So this would include information from that time frame. And as I mentioned, this includes from across the state, all levels of higher education.
I also have a question. A couple of things, a couple of thoughts, I guess, or schools of thought. So this assessment, is there any alignment or any coordination with end-of-course tests that a senior, that high school students have to take, whether it's English 1, English 2, or Algebra 1? Is there any alignment in what students have to be college ready? Because many of our schools in Region 2 have 95% CCMR. It says that they're college ready, 95%. And then we see this type of coming in. It seems like there's a large gap between the two systems, the K-12 and then a college system. That's number one, is a CCMR. The other issue is many of our schools, it's a buzzword now, the COVID slide. We're seeing our students extremely low, having large gaps of information that they just didn't get. So in looking at that whole big picture, how does that work into Del Mar as far as really looking at what's happening in our high schools and especially with end of course?
Regarding your first question and end-of-course exams, I'm sure some of my colleagues may have more to add, but I'll tell you what I know. Given that this test is so new, I believe that we may not have had an adequate opportunity to align or to work toward that alignment. I am not sure if that's happening at the state level. I would hope that it is, though I know my peers do work very closely with the ISDs. They look at our test scores, they look at how the students are doing, and we know that there's a gap there, and we're seeking to improve that. However, because this test is so new, I do believe that additional work can be done in that area. I really do.
And Dr. Villarreal, to your first point about the 90% CCMR, spending a lot of time on this right now, and I think that's an aggregated number. If you disaggregate the numbers, you say 90%, so many of them are falling CCMRs, college, career, military ready. So they could be a smaller proportion of those. It could be that 20% that fall under CCMR, under college. But the vast majority of them could be falling under, it's a misnomer, it's an aggregated number that's including too many different groups. I think the 20% could very well be accurate. This is a major shift for colleges all over. Patricia, would you chime in on the questions that are being asked?
I can chime in on the CCMR. That metric that the ISDs calculate, there's various ways for them to check off that metric in the ISDs. And in our conversations with our ISD colleagues on CCMR is that students just have to take 3 courses and they can check off that metric, not take a test, right? And so like in terms of college credit and dual credit, I tell them CCMR doesn't work for me. I need you to earn, either get core complete, get a certificate, or get an associate's degree. And so we are going back and having those conversations. The other thing with CCMR is that during the senior year, before a student exits, students know if they're college ready or not already at the high school level as they progress through 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. And so ISDs have the option, well, students have the option of taking all year long a comprehensive set of courses that when they exit high school, they can be college ready. But that starts the senior year. It doesn't start any earlier. Other states do it earlier, right? So that's how the CCMR is calculated.
Just a couple of other comments. I love the fact that when you say that, talking to the ISDs, is this done informally or is this more of a formality? And if it's not formal, would it be wise and prudent to meet with our superintendents from these areas with all this new assessment? I mean, just making sure. I know that a lot of the schools also really concentrate on, especially the senior year, ACT and SAT courses. Great, that's wonderful. But I'm also wondering if we need to also suggest, courses for this new assessment to prepare students and make sure that they're ready as well. Just a couple of those thoughts. Thank you so much for listening.
The conversations are not informal. They are very formal. We do address it in a variety of meetings. A lot of it is addressed in the negotiation of the MOU that we have with ISDs. Some of it is at our annual counselor workshop. And then we also have 3 big meetings a year with our ISD partners, talking about and digging into the data. Just like in December when we were talking about the strategic enrollment plan, where Ms. Scott was asking, where are the seniors? We're having that discussion with them, trying to hit all these data points that are, where can we create a win-win, right? Because I don't want students just to take 3 courses, and that doesn't make you, work ready necessarily, right?
There was the second part of your question regarding the impact of COVID. That's going to be very hard to separate out, just the timing of the new instrument and also understanding that a lot of our students were impacted in their final years of learning, and we're not sure how that will impact their college readiness, but that's something that we will seek to study, but it'll be hard to do considering the change in the assessment.
I want to ask, just for context purposes, if we can remind ourselves why this particular topic is part of our strategic plan. It is not part of our strategic plan to point fingers, but to understand how students are coming to us, so we really understand who our students are today, who they have been in most recent years, and what kind of developmental ed work we need to do. So I think it's really important to say that this is, it's part of our plan, but it's not part of our plan because we take all students and we value all students. If you can't, we're the bottom quarter of your class and you've decided, wait, I think I need to do something now, great, come on. we will be here to help you with your educational needs. So I want to make sure that we all, in this conversation, aren't pointing fingers at ISDs and aren't looking at students and saying, why weren't you ready? This is about us making sure we have the resources to meet students where they are.
Well, I think this is an eye-opener because we might have to and have a hybrid. Might need more remedial classes in these areas so that they can get to college ready when they're attending Del Mar.
Absolutely.
We need a plan.
Excellent points. I completely agree that this helps us to understand how our students start, because a very large component of our strategic plan is really helping our students meet their goals. And this is a fundamental starting point of them meeting their goals. So we accept all students, we love all of our students. We want to make sure that we're providing them with the support they need to be successful.
One thing real quick, we're tripping over definitions here as well, and that's why those formal conversations are so important, Dr. Villarreal. I know that's what you're alluding to, and the more we can align the terms such as college ready, what college ready means for CCMR versus what it means for TSI, two different things, and yet we're using the same term, and we do that so much across the state. And I'm getting a lot of nods from the people who really understand what's going on. Whew, I feel better about that. Anyway, so that's so much of what we're dealing with, and we're really trying to formalize those conversations. That's why, side note, commercial, why it's so important for all the committees that we're a part of at the state level to carry that message forward. Raul with the finance side, Patricia over at the coordinating board side, and the like, and various other appointments out there. Those kinds of things need to be hammered out there. Anyway, thank you for that.
Thank you. Given that context, let's take a look at the percentage of our first-time in college students that required developmental coursework beginning in the fall 2021 semester. You'll see that our thresholds and targets are color-coded. We did not meet our threshold of 66%, and we aspire to meet our target of 60% of students requiring developmental education by 2024. It's important to note that this data looks at full-time and part-time first-time in college students. The FTIC population is very important because it provides us with a starting point for a student's journey and allows us to track how our students progress over time. Each fall semester, the college normally enrolls 1,200 to 1,300 FTICs. Since the start of the pandemic, the FTIC population has decreased to approximately 800 FTICs in the fall 2020, and then another 800 in the fall 2021 semester. So just some additional context. Here's the breakdown by subject area of the fall 2021 FTIC students that require developmental education. 68.5% of the fall 2021 FTIC students require developmental education in math, nearly 40% require it in reading, and another 40% require it in writing. These figures are pretty consistent with prior years' data and breakdown. Our students usually need additional support in math. Please also note that these percentages include duplicates, as students may require developmental coursework in multiple subject areas. So let's go back. I just showed you the breakdown by subject. Let's look at our overall combined rates of students requiring developmental education. Here's a visual representation of our 5-year trends. Rates had been relatively stable before the fall of 2021. Please recall that the new TSIA assessment instrument was launched in January 2021. We expect that had an impact on these figures. Visually, you'll see the target that we have set for ourselves for 2024 as indicated by the blue star. Our threshold line is indicated by the red dotted line. We seek to decrease the percentage of students requiring developmental coursework. And as you can see, we've set pretty ambitious targets and thresholds for ourselves, as they are both below our 5-year average. The next slide looks at unprepared students. That's the wording from the coordinating board. Unprepared students who satisfy TSI requirements in 2 years. This looks at first-time in college students who are identified as unprepared based on their TSI assessment scores and tracks them to determine the percentage that meet the state's requirements within 2 years. Again, this is an important progression metric. Where did our students start and how are they progressing? Students can meet the state's TSI requirements either by retesting and becoming college ready or completing their required developmental coursework. I presented this data last year, and again, as part of the SEM plan presentation in December. It hasn't been updated since then. This is data that comes from the coordinating board, and we don't have the newest 2021 data. So once we have that data in future presentations, I'm sure that we will be sharing it with you. We have met our thresholds in reading and writing, but not in math. And the comparison data for our large college peers is also included. This is the most recent data, 2020. It looks at students completing requirements in 2 years. So this is the FTIC fall 2018 population and how they progressed.
If I may, Regents, one of the topics of conversation at the state level and particularly at the commission, the Finance Commission for Community Colleges, is right here with this slide, how much do you think it costs to bring a student through from this slide versus those TSI complete college-ready students who do come to us readily? Where do you think the cost is? It's obvious, right? And so from a funding standpoint, to better support these programs fully and more adequately, more robustly, I guess, fund these programs is what we're talking about, and what we need, what the state really needs to help us to do from the appropriation standpoint. The lift for a student that's coming in, that's whether right out of high school or 10 years after, with these needs, it's just overwhelming for them. Okay, first and foremost for the student, the cost that they've got to bear, the time and investment and everything else. But that, again, as you saw the slides prior to, is unapologetically our base of students. That's what we're here for. And that, I know many of the faculty members and leadership from the particular divisions that have to do with developmental are in the audience, and so and I appreciate that. So it's just something that needs to be overcome. Okay, doing it by the contact hour of, on average, less than $5 per contact hour is just not going to cut it anymore. It can't. It's just overwhelming to everybody's budgets across the state. I just have to add that, and that is part of our conversation with where Chair Scott and I are both part of that commission, and that is being reviewed.
I want to make sure I understand something. It looked like, can you hear me? Okay, it looked like 78% of the test results were not college ready. Am I right? 22% are college ready, so 78% are not college ready?
That's for the new exam on
Okay.
these.
And that included
That's a state average.
That included the people going to four-year colleges, correct?
Correct.
So we're doing better than the average then if we get 73% that are not college ready, which is nothing to brag about, but that's better than the average. And that average includes four-year people that go to colleges that have entrance criteria. So I'm not seeing how we're going to get a whole lot better than that based on the results.
You're correct. That's the new test, however. If you're looking at this slide, this is the prior test. So I think you're right. We do need to compare ourselves to our peers, compare ourselves to how our students are showing up and how quickly we can get them ready. But I just want to make sure you know that new data is for the new test, and this particular slide reflects results from the prior test.
Okay, and in addition to that, our students, the graduates, are averaging about 92 credit hours to get the associate's degree. Is that still pretty correct?
It's about 90, right about 90.
Okay,
about
so
90.
so they're running out of Pell Grant money. So getting their associate's degrees. So if they anticipate going on to a four-year college, they're going to have to fund most of that on their own.
So we're experiencing that. Yes, that is the case, and we are working to shrink time to completion. Of course, whether it's attributed to developmental ed, their need for developmental ed and/or changing majors, once they do both those things, is when the classes just rapidly escalate. In developmental ed, trying to find a major, going from here, going to there, it takes a heavier commitment from those students earlier on, and yes, they do burn through their allotted hours for federal financial aid. For that portion that does participate in financial aid, I will say that there's a significant portion here that continues to pay out of pocket as they move along as well. Both cases are very detrimental to their personal finances. Again, we're talking about a high needs group, unprepared students. That's the term, that the coordinating board is using, and I like to call it. I've been for years calling it the high need and highest need group. It takes a very particular group of professionals with a very purposeful plan to get them through. It has not changed, and as Chair Scott, we're not pointing fingers here. We accept them as they are, and bring them along the best we can. It's a very tough situation.
But I predict that 73% will rise again, at least for about another 2 years before it plateaus and then starts coming down.
Yep. The test will be tweaked. The validity is being tested as was indicated here. So that right there is probably true of any new assessment instrument as they're brought on. And I think, we as professionals administering and supporting that will better understand the nuances and that sort of thing. So I agree with Dr. Turner very much that those numbers will level out to some sort of normalcy.
I think in a couple years, the student that we're seeing in public education has changed. They are not the same as they were in 2020 or 2019 that are coming through. And again, is that the COVID excuse that we're coming through, but it's a real one. And we just have kids that have major gaps, and we're seeing that in public education, even in middle school, major gaps.
Well, we'll accept them whenever they're ready to come to us. We will. Moving on to the next slide. This is very similar to the last one, except it looks at unprepared students completing a college-level course in 2 years. The last slide looked at meeting TSI requirements in 2 years, and this looks at completing a college-level course. We have met our thresholds for reading and writing, but not for math. We have also already met our target for 2024 for writing. And again, included within this table is comparison data for our large college peers. This data has not yet been updated for 2021, but as this was originally a part of our strategic plan KPIs, I just wanted to make sure that you kept them in mind. Any questions about this indicator? Okay, let's move on to some new ones. These next 4 slides are new to us at Del Mar College. The Texas Success Center has developed new dashboards, which includes leading student progression indicators. I know that many members of our Board of Regents have attended Board of Trustees Institutes within the last year or so, and more than likely you will have been introduced to these new dashboards that the Texas Success Center has introduced. We will be reviewing the next few slides, which include summarized data from those dashboards. This chart illustrates the percentage of first-time in college students that completed college-level math in their first year of enrollment at Del Mar College. Again, knowing how our first-time in college students progress is very, very important. Data on our FTICs illustrate how our students are progressing given a common starting point. All FTICs are included within this data point, full-time and part-time, college-ready and not college-ready. This indicator is not a direct measure of academic preparedness. However, it is a reflection of academic preparedness as it illustrates how our students are progressing in completing the building blocks for the majority of our programs, in this case, math. And in just a minute, we'll look at reading and writing. During the 7-year time period that this chart represents, the average percentage of Del Mar College students completing college-level math in year 1 was 13%. The statewide community college average was 30%. This chart illustrates the percentage of first-time in college students that completed college-level reading in their first year of enrollment at Del Mar College. During this 7-year time period, the average percentage of students completing college-level reading in year 1 was 30%. The statewide community college average was 55%. This chart illustrates the percentage of FTIC students that completed college-level writing in their first year. The average percentage of students completing the college-level writing course in year 1 was 33% as compared to the state community college average of almost 48%. And finally, combining all of these subject areas, during this period of time, on average, Del Mar College students completed all 3 subject areas in their first year. 6.6% of our FTICs completed this coursework as compared to the state average. These are new to us, very important to show initial progression, and we realize that our students need to be completing these college-level courses early in their careers. The dashboards, which I'm not going to show the interactive dashboards, but they allow us to disaggregate by gender, ethnicity, Pell status, so we'll be looking further into some of the differences between our student groups and student attributes. Are there any questions regarding these new metrics?
I have some questions around best practices. Who in Texas is doing this work really well, is doing developmental ed work really well? And I know you're going to talk about some strategies, but I'm curious as to, as opposed to incremental change, if there were resources and focus on this issue, what could potentially best practice replication look like?
I think that's a very good point, a very good suggestion. There are colleges in Texas that have really put a lot of effort, time, grant resources, also professional development for faculty, and changes to the curriculum, quite frankly, to make sure that students are getting just-in-time help. Pairing, we mentioned already, co-requisite model. We've started that recently, but there's some schools that are really experts at it, where students can enroll in college-level algebra, for instance, and then get just-in-time support in the areas that they need tied to that college-level learning. Off the top of my head, I can tell you that Amarillo College is generally a leader in that regard, the Alamo colleges. I know that my peers are here with me, and they're several of them, all of them, are leaders in developmental education. John DeHalcom will be talking about our strategies, but I think what you're suggesting is an excellent one to see how others have tackled and improved their metrics.
Because what strikes me is the synthesis of the COVID effect, what is already a challenge for us in terms of accepting all students and providing the support that they need to succeed. Looking at this particular year 1 start, I know our students, vast majority of our students, almost 80% are part-time students, and so year 1 takes on a different definition when you're a part-time student, or at least practically, maybe not in theory and in institutional language, but in practicality, it takes on a different meaning. But when I synthesize all of that together, if we want to support our students in succeeding in their first ventures into college, math, reading, and writing, we probably need to be doing something different. And so what could potentially that look like, and what sort of support do we need for those students, and what sort of changes potentially need to be made so that we can support those students adequately?
I think you're
Yes.
absolutely right. If I can add just real quick, I know you were talking about full-time, part-time. That makes a big difference, a tremendous difference when it comes to what they can accomplish in year 1. The 85% statistic that you referenced is how our students are enrolling in the COVID environment. I want to make note that this is pre-COVID, and part of what I looked at in putting this together is how do we compare to our state peers? Because I didn't want to show you data that we really couldn't compare ourselves to. And during this time period, I can tell you that Our rates of part-time students were quite comparable with the state average. So I do think we need to consider that, but I also want to make sure you're aware that that's something that all of our community colleges are facing, and we still have these big differences in our rates.
So is the, I do want you to respond, let me, for clarification.
Sure.
So this could mean that students just did not attempt, because of developmental ed, a college-level math, reading, or writing course in their first calendar year, one, because they were in development ed, or two, because they are part-time. So this is not that they tried and failed, this is that they did not take and pass
Correct.
a math, reading, or writing course.
It is a complicated indicator in
Okay.
that there are several factors that could contribute to it. Also, whether or not they need those courses in their degree plan. So another factor that I looked at is comparing ourselves to our peers. What percentage of our students are pursuing transfer degrees versus workforce degrees? And during this time period, it was pretty comparable. That's another thing to think about as well. This looks only at credit students, not continuing ed, though I am sure that many students have prior continuing ed training. So there's quite a few factors. The part-time status, whether they were enrolled in developmental coursework, whether they're afraid of math. We hear that. We're going to wait until the end. So there's quite a few factors that could impact this. And again, this is very, very new, but we want to use the data that comes from the state. We want to look at, well, with caveats. We understand that what the state provides isn't perfect, but we are in the business of looking at early student progression, and these indicators give us a good picture of what's happening.
So these are the slides that we bring to you all, Regents, and to the college for consideration. When I opened up the comments about this segment of our workshop, the ideas of adjusting and making those major goal changes is this is where we need to consider that, for these kinds of reasons. We've stated it before that we need to shift strategies such that we're creating more sophomores, making more sophomores. In other words, getting that completion out of that freshman experience and getting through all the preliminary types of things. Easier said than done, right? But still, that needs to be a type of goal change and so forth for the college. And we need to focus on those strategies, fund those strategies, and the like. Those students that are not moving through, will have their challenges, but if we set up the frameworks, if we set up our processes and procedures to enable them better on the front end, that's where the fundamental changes are different at the other colleges. Their full-time rates are higher. The way they package their courses on the front end and their processes on the front end of the student experience really prepares them for these completions. The college's positioning as a commuter college continues to work against the students. They're taking off the small bites and it's 6.5 hours at a time. And the like. So when they're coming in with all these heavy front-end high needs, it stretches everything out, and they're not near as efficient as they should be. But these are the conversations. We bring these to you all so that we can talk about the strategic changes in order to meet and improve these goals significantly. Mr.
Garza has a question.
Yeah, just a comment and question, I guess, is that at the very beginning, when you showed the initial numbers, which were, I want to say, a bit of a shock factor, 22% students actually being ready, college ready, I was a little concerned about our dual credit program. But then I saw in following slides that didn't include dual credit students.
Correct.
Right? And so I'm a fan and I'm a supporter of dual credit, right? And I think that's a big step toward affordability for all students in terms of being able to get or engage in higher education. But I also think we do need to know those numbers in terms of college, dual credit students and where they're at. And I guess, pushed to make sure that their numbers are actually included in the overall number, because I think that the state needs to know that they're getting their bang for their buck in terms of the dual credit program, I think, because I think there's tremendous value there. The other side of things is that when we talk about college ready, right, for years and years and forever, right, we've always thought in terms of a college being only an academic, right, institution or institution for academic learning, or the basic classes that are going to lead toward a four-year degree. And then in this particular environment we're in now, for me, college ready for a vocational student that might not be taking the calculus or, the higher, I'm going to say higher classes leading toward a bachelor's degree. College ready for them, in my opinion, is different. And so they need their scores and their track needs to be, I'm going to say, from a total standpoint, both here and statewide, needs to be calculated differently. Because if they're going to enter classes for vocational programs, for crafts, for those types of training, their college ready, in my opinion, is different.
And one thing I'd like to say about that is that our short-term credit certificates, what we call our level 1 certificates, do not require that they be college ready. That's a state law. The level 1 certificates do not require college readiness.
But are they being tested?
As they
Yeah.
progress to level 2, to their associate degrees, which a lot of our students want to do, both on the transfer side and the workforce side, they will need to take the test and they will need to be college ready.
But I mean, if we're testing students right out of high school, and say, for instance, that 25 or 30% or 37% of those students are not looking at going into a four-year curriculum or degree, if we're testing them to determine whether they're college ready, I mean, they should be tested to the point that they're saying, okay, what's your intention, or what are you looking at getting in terms of workforce training? Then their testing and their, I'm going to say, pass rate or level should be different.
I hear what you're saying, and I think it goes back to what Dr. Escamilla was saying about definitions, what we mean by college readiness, and we do offer a variety of programs that allow students to enter even if they're not college ready. As I mentioned, the level 1 certificates. Additionally, we have a whole huge population of students pursuing continuing education certifications that don't require the meeting of the college readiness standards. So I think the language piece doesn't tell the whole story. The language that we're focusing on today is specific for credit students, and it's specific for this test, and it has limitations. I agree.
And I'm proud of where we are in terms of Del Mar, where we're trying to service or trying to help all the population in order to be able to achieve a higher standard of living. And those students that do not go into our academic programs are going to benefit or going to improve the quality of living for all of us, because they're going to provide services that are desperately or direly needed in our community.
And that being said, Regent Garza, we're still talking about the college. And believe me, these numbers are very serious. We present them very seriously. We consider them very important things for us to focus on. That being said, the college is still completing with degrees and certificates on the credit side 17, 18, 1,900 students a year over the past several years, and then there's another 1,500 or so consistently who leave the college without a degree but go on to the universities. So again, when we're talking about accomplishments and so forth, let's not forget about all the great work that's out there, and that there's a 3,000 plus every year that go off to do great things with their degrees and certificates between fully graduating, come on Patricia, fully graduating and leaving and being an early leaver that transfers to a university with our hours. Patricia?
I just wanted to address the dual credit comments that were made. On dual credit, the vast majority of dual credit students that come here do TSI tests, and the criteria for them to enroll in credit courses is they have to be college ready. We do have a large number of dual credit students that are pursuing certificate level ones that don't have to TSI, but majority of the ISDs here make them take the TSI for one, because it improves their metric of the CCMR, and also some of them are like the state has infused a lot of incentives for ISDs to go after to being a P-STEM, also the early colleges. And if you are a P-STEM, early college, and I think there's another one, that it is required that they take all parts of the TSI. So that, you know, majority of the 20% of the students, that 22% of the dual credit students that come here, the vast majority of them are scoring at college readiness on all levels.
Thank you. Excellent discussion, excellent questions. I'll now hand the floor over to Dr. John DeHalcom, who will be discussing our strategies for academic preparedness.
Thank you, Christina. What do we do to help our students who need developmental education courses? We've discussed these previously, and Dr. Wilson has mentioned them earlier in the presentation. There are curricular strategies that we have put in place to support students who require developmental education. We offer integrated reading and writing, or INRW. We created that several years ago. We used to have the reading completely separate from writing. It was state mandated to create an INRW course. And I think it's been working fairly well. We also offer, as what was mentioned earlier, co-requisites. Those are mandated by the state of Texas, and we're supposed to be about 75% offering of co-requisites. Students who are placed at the highest levels of developmental reading and writing can co-requisite with an English 1301 course, and they can get credit for the college level English at the same time they're working on the developmental course. So we do that also in mathematics. Those people at the highest level of developmental math are Math 0373. Intermediate algebra is also, they also co-enroll in college algebra or contemporary math or statistics. So they can work on, you know, they may know certain skills at the college level, but not all. So you have the developmental sequence there, and so the instructor can teach them some of the basics, and then it incorporates very well into the college level course. Now, students also in their first developmental education course are required to take a student success course as well. That way they learn how to navigate through college. So we do require that as a strategy as well. Now, Dr. Wilson also mentioned the NCBOs, the non-course-based options. Those were created some time ago as well. And so those are interventions in which a student maybe is taking English at the college level. Then they have this non-course-based option. Yes, they get a credit hour, even though it's not a course. You know, it's non-course. And so it may be that that instructor is more individually based, and that instructor may identify some weaknesses in their English course or the math course, and they can work side by side with the student as they approach maybe some difficult task to get them successful in that English or math course. Now, in mathematics, they use a lot of My Math Lab, which is a very good program for the students, contains many videos, interactive homework problems, and it gives 24/7 support. So that's another way that we're helping our students. Now, one thing we haven't really mentioned or talked about very much in the past is that we do have a developmental education committee. And although developmental education courses are offered within 2 of our academic divisions, which are led by, you know, the STEM dean, Jack Southard, Dr. Jack Southard, and Also, the CFAS Dean, the Communications, Fine Arts, and Social Science Division, Dr. Bridges, are students who need other involvement as well for us to be successful. And I'm so glad that all of you are so engaged in our developmental education courses and wanting our students to be so successful. But we've developed actually the college has had this committee for many years, even before I came here over 20 years ago. We call it DEC, Developmental Education Committee. This year, the chair of the committee is Dr. Dale Anderson. He's here in the audience with us today if you have any questions about DEC. But DEC has a mission to engender understanding of developmental education as a field of practice and research. And it's mentioned on our policy A7.17, the Del Mar College Developmental Education Plan receives oversight from the College-wide Developmental Education Council. So DEC is comprised of individuals throughout the entire campus that can give that support and insight into developmental education. Academic areas are represented, student services, leadership, and they meet once a month throughout the year to discuss how we can help our students to succeed. Now, I also wanted to mention that we do have a coordinator of developmental education, Dr. Tammy Francis, who also is here today. She keeps us updated on some of those successful schools like Amarillo and some of the others. She goes out to many of the meetings and has been in leadership positions within certain developmental ed organizations. And she's very active in our DEC committee and gives updates regularly, and the deans and I meet with her as well to get updates of what is happening throughout the state of Texas. So we're very pleased that she takes the lead on that. Now, some other academic preparedness strategies. Learning supports, our math lab under Director Eric Moeller. He's been leading this for many years. Thousands of students come through the Math Learning Center. And for many years, this has been a place for students to go to seek additional help beyond the classroom and to give excellent advice through the assistant instructors, professional tutors, and they know how the faculty teach, so they're able to help our students to succeed in that math course. But also the Math Learning Center provides help for those in engineering, advanced mathematics. And I checked with Eric Moeller about a week ago, probably about a third of the students are those in developmental mathematics courses. So this Math Learning Center serves our whole college for a variety of courses that they do take. The Reading Lab, under the direction of Communications, Languages, and Reading Department, makes or is available to all students that are taking reading and English developmental education courses, and really anyone. And then the Stone Writing Center has been very successful in helping our students through their English courses. And they have provided a lot of online tutoring through COVID, and they've been very successful at this. The Student Success Center under Student Affairs assists students who need tutoring or additional support in reading, writing, and math. So they tend to have peer tutors. Sometimes students respond better to a peer tutor. Other students may respond better to a professional tutor or a faculty or assistant instructor. So we're trying to give them all opportunities that they may need. Now, one thing I wanted to mention, in our previous QEP, before this one on advising, we focused on developmental mathematics. It was a roadmap to success. The math department is continuing certain initiatives that were successful from our last QEP. So one thing that they are doing, have done it in the past, less so during COVID, but I just checked with the dean of the division, and they are continuing to offer math seminars for our developmental math students. And in the past, they've expressed that students do better when they attend these seminars. So we are doing that as well. So as you can see, we're continuously striving to help our students with the skills needed to make them successful. Now, advising is a big component, advising students. Our students needing developmental courses may have life events. They need some extra help, and we have counselors, we have retention case managers, we have the success course. We have so many opportunities to help our students, because it's not just about the course with the knowledge. Sometimes it's developing the skills to, like, be to class on time, show up every day, do the homework, budget your time. And you may think, oh, well, that's not as important as the knowledge. Yeah, it is very important. And sometimes our students aren't successful because they don't know some of the basic skills that are needed to be successful in those courses. Are there any questions about our strategies? We're continuously trying to improve, of course. We have a big task ahead of us. And so we take this very seriously. Are there any questions before I hand this back over to Dr. Wilson?
I just had one.
Yes.
On your math labs, the reading and the writing, are they open in the evening at all to support those who work during the day?
We
And do you
have extended
anything?
hours for
Okay.
Math Learning Center. I don't recall their hours right now. They've been doing more online tutoring through COVID. So they're coming back more face-to-face, but they were doing extended hours. I don't recall in the reading lab, Dale.
Any Saturdays opening?
Do you know what the extended hours for reading lab are? Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
I had forgotten about Saturday. Thank you, Dale, for that. I'm glad you were here.
I have a question about how do you measure the effectiveness of these strategies? Are there short-term measurements? Obviously, there's number of students who participate, but are we actually tying strategies to student success in their current classes as well as future persistence?
Yeah, we have some people trying to pull data to see the success of the co-requisite model for us. We do not have that data today, but we'll be glad to pull that data. Some of the individual chairs are calculating the success, how many taking the developmental INRW, how many are succeeding in the English 1301, for example. So we'll get that data for you. So we are trying to match those strategies with that success. It's a little bit harder with the learning support, such as math, reading labs. Sometimes we have to see what's the attendance in those. And then it also makes a difference if an instructor mandates it, so you have to go like to the math seminars. When we did the previous QEP, they found if you mandate it, put it in the syllabus, they have to attend so many, they're more successful. So we are trying to tie that where we can. A little bit, like I said, harder when people are going into the math lab, reading lab randomly to get help. So
do students check in with their ID badge when they go in for tutoring?
Yes, they check in.
Okay.
Yes, there's a way we track.
So is there a way to track? I'm curious, again, I'm looking for what is anecdotally working or what is proven to work, both in terms of leading indicators as well as long-term success. That's really kind of where I'm coming from on the questions.
Well, we can certainly pull some of the data there. Do they know the names of every student that comes in? I think they're keeping a list of that. I will check on that and
Okay.
see what we can do.
And if we could institute some way to measure that effectiveness, even if we can't go back too many years, but can we begin to tie strategies to effectiveness?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Other
will do that.
questions on this part? Great, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Excellent suggestions. There are models for that. I think we need to think about implementing those. Madam Chair, I do realize that we have discussed academic preparedness for quite a while. I think it could have been its own workshop, and I'm glad that we took the time to discuss it. I really, really am. But I wanted to ask your feedback regarding proceeding. We are happy to proceed maybe with the remainder of Goal 3 if you'd like, but I want to just check and make sure if that's all right with you.
How many slides do you have?
For the rest of Goal 3, maybe about 15.
Okay. Let's go for maybe 15 or 20 more minutes, then we can take our break for lunch and we can do our staff compensation as part of the next agenda. Can we do that, Augie? Yes, okay. So let's go for
Thank
another
you.
15, 20 minutes and see if we can wrap this portion of it up, and then we'll go to our next item during the regular agenda.
Thank you. Let's talk about the second part of Goal 3, which focuses on student learning. Student learning from March 2020 until just a few months ago occurred very differently at Del Mar College and everywhere else than it had before. We can't present this information as we had previously because we have a whole new story to tell. This next portion of our presentation will focus on what happened when we transitioned to online learning for many of our programs. Later, I anticipate we probably will not be able to get to this part, but we had planned to discuss how we were able to continue face-to-face learning for quite a few of our programs as well. I will now welcome Cody Gregg, the Dean of Learning Resources, to discuss instruction in the age of COVID-19, our KPIs, and our institutional strategies. Mr. Gregg.
Good morning. This discussion of distance education is very appropriate right now, and I'd like to begin by reminding everyone where we were exactly 2 years ago this week. Something just popped up on my Facebook memories a little while ago, and the college was on spring break. And some of us had taken trips, but we were also realizing that something really, really big was on the horizon. I recall a conversation with Dr. Escamilla. I was pulled over in a parking lot in Phoenix, Arizona, on the phone with Dr. Escamilla talking about how are we ready for this and what's going to happen when we get back from spring break. So the rest of what I'm going to talk to you today is a little bit of historical context about distance education at Del Mar College, but also what happened in those two ensuing years. And it really struck me that as appropriate that we were discussing that today during this week. So distance education began at Del Mar College in 1984, if you can believe that, and included a variety of modalities, including off-campus courses, which were considered distance education at the time, as well as the use of VHS tapes, if any of you can recall what those are. As technology evolved, it also encompassed interactive video conferencing, online competency-based courses, online courses, and hybrid courses, which continue to this day. The first online course was offered in 1998. And now, during the 6th semester of the COVID-19 pandemic, we have 185 faculty teaching distance education courses. That is down from over 300 just about a year ago. Del Mar College currently offers 7 awards, certificates, and degrees fully online. And the Office of Learning, with greatly appreciated assistance from IT, supports the college's online efforts with 4 full-time staff members. Now, for colleges and universities in the state of Texas, the term distance education, going back to something that Dr. Escamilla remarked about a little while ago about terms and definitions, the term distance education and the modalities that make up distance education are defined in Texas Administrative Code. Distance education is defined as the formal educational process in which students and instructors are not in the same physical setting for over half of instruction. A fully distance education course has more than 85% of instruction occurring online, but can include some on-campus elements, such as library orientations or on-campus testing. Hybrid courses are considered a form of distance education and are characterized by between half and 85% of instruction being delivered online. Face-to-face courses can have online components, which is known as web enhancing, as long as 49% or less of content is delivered online. Prior to COVID-19, video conferencing had lost prominence over the past 10 to 20 years. A video conference was previously characterized by the instructor delivering course content via video to students who were at one or more official off-campus receiving sites. With the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, video conferencing again gained prominence with the use of online platforms such as Microsoft Teams and WebEx, to name a few. The term HyFlex has also become much more prominent with the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. HyFlex courses offer the maximum flexibility to students in terms of their receiving course content. In a HyFlex course, the instructor teaches face-to-face and by video simultaneously. Students can choose to attend the class face-to-face or by video in the venue of their choice. It is important to note that while HyFlex courses are gaining prominence, they are not an officially recognized modality by the state of Texas. It is also important to note that HyFlex courses depend on having a robust and flexible technological infrastructure that can support effective video instruction in the classrooms. I'll now pause for any questions you might have. Keep going. Okay, keep going. All right. The graphic on this slide represents the unduplicated student enrollment from fall 2021 credit courses broken out into three categories. Number one, those students enrolled in only distance education courses. Number two, those students enrolled in only face-to-face courses. And number three, those students enrolled in both face-to-face courses and distance education courses. By way of comparison, each of these percentages has changed substantially since 2019 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The next slide will show these changes. This graphic presents an overall big picture view of the fall 2021 student enrollment and includes both dual credit students and non-dual credit students. It is important to note also that in accordance with the state of Texas definition, the distance education category contains both online courses and hybrid courses. This slide shows the change in unduplicated enrollment composition that has occurred during the COVID-19 pandemic. As you can see from the table, the percentages of students in only face-to-face and only distance education classes have virtually flip-flopped, with the percentage enrolling in only distance education increasing by 32% and a coinciding decrease in face-to-face enrollments of 38%. Students enrolled in both face-to-face and distance education increased by a more modest 6%. Contact hours are another metric we use to examine the impact and scope of distance education. Contact hours are a representation of the number of instructional hours spent by students enrolled in DMC classes for which the college is reimbursed by the state of Texas. As this slide illustrates, Del Mar College generated over 4.3 million credit contact hours in 2020-2021. 75% of those contact hours were distance education, which includes both online and hybrid courses. 61% of those contact hours were for online or fully distance education classes as defined by the state. As a reminder, this was the year at the height of the pandemic. During that same time period, continuing education generated 700,000 contact hours, nearly 700,000 contact hours, 135,000 of which were from distance education classes. This equates to a total of 20% of continuing education contact hours occurring in distance education courses. Expanding on the information presented in the previous slides, this slide shows the percentage of credit contact hours generated by distance education beginning in 2018-2019 before the COVID-19 pandemic and extending to fall 2021. Because the pandemic began in 2019-2020, that year's percentages are anomalous. Both the classes for the spring 2020 and summer 2020 terms were already entered into the college's information systems and thus were reported as their original intended modality. But we know that during that time period, the college's classes transitioned largely to remote emergency online instruction. Thus, while the reported percentage of contact hours for 2019-2020 is 30%, The reality is much higher, as represented by the red-yellow arrow and that red asterisk for that year. It is also important to note the drop from 75% in 2020 to 2021 to 57% in fall 2021 as we begin to emerge from the pandemic. We will now move from enrollment and contact hours to examine success in distance education courses. I will pause for any questions. I feel like I'm rushing through this to just get you through it, so if you have any questions.
Yes, Mr.
Just one
Bennett.
question. It looks like, am I understanding it correctly, we've got 19% of our students face-to-face, and they're generating 25% of the credit hours? So they take more hours, the face-to-face people. Okay.
Okay. Moving on.
We
All
will,
right.
we will interrupt if we need to. How's that?
Okay, sounds good. Persistence can be viewed in two ways, within the same semester or from semester to semester. In other words, did a student successfully complete their course for the semester without dropping? And did the student enroll for classes in the following semester? This first slide on persistence examines persistence within the same semester. That is, the average percentage of students who withdrew in each semester from spring 2015 to 2019 compared to both fall 2020 and fall 2021. Student persistence within the semester for face-to-face and distance education was equivalent from 2015 through 2019. The data shows that withdrawal rates in distance education courses were no more than 3% higher than withdrawal rates in face-to-face classes during this time period. This next slide gives a snapshot of student persistence from the fall semester to the subsequent spring semester in 2019 through 2022. Persistence rates for students enrolled in only face-to-face courses and in a combination of face-to-face courses plus distance education courses range from a low of 67% to a high of 75%. The persistence rate for students enrolled in distance education courses is somewhat lower at 58 to 68%. Overall, persistence rates were higher for students taking some combination of distance education and face-to-face classes. Overall, semester-to-semester persistence rates for Del Mar College have traditionally been in the 70 to 75% range, as reported on the National Community College Benchmark Project Survey, which places us in the 75th percentile of all colleges participating. The face-to-face only and distance education plus face-to-face percentages reported on this slide are very close to this historical data, while the distance education only percentage is lower. As this is the second year in which we have disaggregated our data to examine distance education in this way, we are not sure if this is part of a longer-term trend. As we continue to track data on distance education, we intend to continue to track this item as well as look at the historical persistence rates to learn more about our students' patterns and to be able to assist them with the transitions as necessary. The last KPI for Goal 3 is course completion rates. We will be looking at rates for non-dual credit students and dual credit students separately. This table includes the rates for students enrolled in credit programs excluding dual credit students. The rates are disaggregated by the following course delivery methods: face-to-face, online, and hybrid. Students successfully complete a course when they earn a grade of A, B, or C. Our faculty aim to create environments that support student learning while also maintaining the challenge and rigor that is appropriate for college-level coursework. It is important that we consistently monitor our course completion rates while also ensuring that students are succeeding in all of our course delivery methods. We have set a threshold for our completion rates for all course delivery methods to be within 20 percentage points of each other. We have met this threshold. Our target for 2024 is to narrow the differences between these course completion rates to be within 5 percentage points of each other.
Do you have an indication on the hybrid being over 78%, why that course completion rate would be higher for a hybrid?
We believe that that is because hybrids have been pretty selectively used within a couple of programs. If you'll recall, it was a couple of years ago when I made this presentation, process technology accounted for close to 50% of the hybrid courses, as well as nursing, another 10%. So with those two being very selective and structured programs, we feel like that is skewing those numbers upwards, if that makes sense.
You factor for those, and then probably in line, the rest of those courses in line with what we are presenting there with the 60s.
Sure.
And so forth.
Sure, and I will note that kind of historically, there has been some research out there that has shown hybrid to be a little more successful than the other modalities, so that could be playing a factor as well. Okay. Moving on to the next slide. Here you will see the 5-year trends for all 3 course delivery methods. Hybrid course completion rates are consistently higher than face-to-face, as you noted. We attribute this, as I just said, to the course sections being offered as process technology and nurse education. And online course completion rates tended to be slightly lower than face-to-face completion rates, as you can see there. All right, moving on to course completion rates for dual credit students. We have set the same threshold and target for dual credit students, and we have met the threshold for fall 2021. Please note that we do not offer hybrid course delivery format for dual credit course sections. Our partnering ISDs prefer face-to-face or online course sections to facilitate consistent scheduling. On this next slide, you will see 5-year trends for all 3 course delivery methods for dual credit students. As you can see, the face-to-face course completion rates are consistently higher than online for dual credit students, as well as you can see a dip in 2020, which was the COVID year. All right, moving on from the data to talk about some of our strategies in distance education. Since the onset of the pandemic, the college has invested significantly in training for faculty and staff in online learning. This slide and the following show some of our efforts in the Office of E-Learning during this time, including, for example, presentations during faculty professional development days, the expansion of the distance education faculty handbook, and a new course in hybrid course design. In addition, the Office of E-Learning has conducted a well-attended symposium in distance education in November of each year. The college has also committed the use of HERF funds to bring in nationally recognized experts to provide a variety of professional development and facilitate the creation of shareable departmental courses. The Office of the Vice President and Chief Academic Officer has been very involved in and supportive of these efforts, and we look forward to seeing the benefits in the semesters to come. Any questions on those? Okay, if not, I will turn it back over to Dr. Wilson.
I didn't realize that was your last slide. I do have kind of an overall question.
Yes.
I was going to let you finish your presentation.
I was going to bold.
I am hearing some of our colleagues across the state talk about the investment and the learning from the last 2 years related to online courses. And I know of at least one college that is launching a complete separate offering, taking their best online instructors, and they are going to create a complete online set of courses and have those faculty focus solely on online learning. They're going to create a college within a college, a complete online campus. So I'm curious, I'm not saying we should go there, but I'm curious as to, the thought process was that we've got some faculty who were really successful at this and a set of students who they could identify successful attributes or the attributes that would make online students successful. And so they're trying to pair those students who can do that work well, those faculty that can teach well in that model with and creating, again, an online campus. So I'm curious as to what the future might hold for us. Again, I'm not saying we do that, but I'm curious as to what we have learned and what the future might be for us in terms of online education. So I'm not sure that that's your question as much as it may be Dr. Escamilla's and Dr. Holcomb's, but it's the three of you together.
It is a big question in terms of what I've always described as the permanency. In other words, the things we've learned from COVID, there's a percentage, Regent Goddess and I were talking about this the other day, there's a percentage of the way we do things now that should not change and we should keep, okay? Now, and it is for those students who will jump on a computer and accelerate and move through with ease. That percentage of our student population, we know where they are. They're likely those TSI complete, or they complete more quickly. It's that bunch that if they don't come in TSI ready, that they complete rather quickly. Creating that, taking that niche and those lessons learned and launching an e-college, a division of, I forget what they call them out there anymore, but those divisions within the college, a college within the college kind of thing, on purely online, is something that's been out for a while. How we adapt to what we've learned is going to be our opportunity, and learning what we've learned, because there were faculty, I dare say that from what I've heard, faculty that weren't used to teaching online that now wish they would never have to go back. And then you have the opposite, because then you'll always need the face-to-face. And I think that'll be the vast majority, and or a preponderance anyway, of our students because of the needs and so forth. Dean Gregg, what is your opinion?
You know, I think it's a noble and admirable goal. I think practically speaking, and some of my colleagues are here, our academic instructional deans are here, I think practically speaking, the difficulty for a college our size might be in the number of faculty that we have. We have some of our departments that are rather small in terms of the number of faculty, and so pulling that one faculty member out to do all online could adversely affect, you know, the number of face-to-face courses that they're able to teach as well. So that might be a hindrance for us, but certainly I think is something that we could overcome if we chose to.
I think when we think about the number of students that are out there that are going to need, whether it's developmental ed or, again, additional time, we know that there's a gap between our current enrollment and what our potential enrollment could be, and how do we serve that. So I guess I'm just looking for, we've invested a lot of time and learning and energy in online. How can we continue to maximize those resources? So just give you food for thought.
Duly noted.
I think it's a great point, though, and I'm glad you brought it up. I think there are students that, as Dr. Escamilla said, they do well, and there are students who want the face-to-face college life, university life on campus. They want to go into a classroom. At the same hand, there are the teachers, there are the instructors who do very, very well instruction, providing instruction in a face-to-face. I teach virtually, and I do much better when I have students face-to-face than I do when I have them online. It's just not my skill, but I've sort of been forced into that. So it goes back to learning styles, teaching styles, and what our students are wanting. Once we can put COVID out of the way and just look at what kind of students we have and what our professors want as well, I think then you can really put a plan together and see where we can go.
Well, the number 7 that was presented earlier, there are 7 programs, 7 areas of purely online degrees and certificates that we have. That was a number that was presented earlier. So we have a base to begin with and to advance from, so that core has been around for a good while and so forth. But you know, you do that, and we talk about in those terms, then you start talking about faculty that are teaching from the moon, you know. so to speak, and that can come in and really teach from anywhere and the like. And I know Ms. Keys has been talking about for a long time a whole new possible category of faculty that in that right. And so I dare say that she and Dr. Jonda have the plan already, and they're just I think there are opportunities right in front of us.
On those 7 programs, how successful are they that are purely online? What are their achievement rates?
They've been around for a long time. From what I'm gathering, we don't have that data with me unless somebody has those off the tops of their heads.
Business administration is one of them.
I'm sorry?
Business administration, which
Yeah,
is
that's
your
been-
largest transfer degree plan in the country, started back in the 90s.
Yeah, it'd be in the statistical profile. The data on how they're doing is available. I don't have that with me.
That's fine.
Today, but
I'd
I'll
just be
circle
curious to
back.
see how successful, and you have 2 programs that are basically hybrided programs. I just want, be interesting to see how our face-to-face programs are doing in comparison to the other ones, to see if there's any movement and moving forward from when we are doing planning.
We're all taking notes, and we'll follow up with that.
And Dr. Escamilla, I would also note that the key to that number 7 is not just do we offer the courses, but do we offer them in a sequence
Yes.
in which students can complete
Yes.
in a reasonable amount of time. That was one of our highest priorities in distance ed, was beginning to look at that and work on that with Dr. Wilson's office right prior to everything getting scrambled about 2 years ago. So as we're coming back down from the pandemic, that moves back up in our priority list. So we'll start looking at that, and I would venture to say that you'll see that number go up.
Yeah,
over the next
and that's
several
key
years.
right there. And that's what I was alluding to with all of our programs, the sequencing of the courses and so forth for completion and bringing students in. That applies to all of our students on sequencing and providing that framework on the front end so that our students finish more complete. So it's not just for the online students. I just had to add that. Thank you.
Got it. Thank you.
We're in the home stretch, I promise.
Got 8 minutes.
A few minutes ago, Dr. Halcomb talked about learning supports available to our students who require academic preparedness support. In addition to those supports, we also have discipline-specific supports. Just want to make sure that you're aware that we have a nursing success center, a speech lab, a languages lab. These are just a few examples. These services were offered online when they were necessary, and now they are offered back face-to-face and also online. Finally, I want to conclude the discussion of student learning with letting you know that we don't just look at grades when it comes to student learning. We are required as a college by our accreditor to also look at how students are doing in the accomplishment of general education competencies and also program learning outcomes. Our faculty, aside from grades, they say this is what students need to know by the time they leave us. So these are processes that occur. General education, it happens all the time, annually. We pick a different objective to assess each year, each semester. Program learning outcomes are assessed annually, and we report to you all on instructional program review, which takes place every 5 years. So these are things that are a little harder to report on. The data is a little different for each of these segments, but I want you to know that aside from grades, our faculty, our administrators, and our staff are looking at how our students are learning. So this morning we talked about academic preparedness and student learning, and we want this to be a discussion. I know it took longer than we anticipated, but I hope that it was helpful to you as it was helpful to us. We always try to have those experts in the audience to be available to answer questions, but also to know what your concerns are. So I want to thank you for your time. We didn't get to go to cover goal 4, but it seems as though we're moving towards a model where one goal at a time may be best. So thank you for your time today, and I'll pause for any final questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wilson. And I'm sorry, we are engaged, which is, I guess, is a double-edged sword. Mr. Kelly has joined us for the end of our workshop. What I think we're going to do is, well, we just in time for lunch. What I think we're going to do is go ahead and pause here for lunch. If we can do that quickly, we might come back even before 1 o'clock and try to finish the last item on our workshop, which is to review the faculty and staff compensation item of business on our workshop, and then we will convene the regular board meeting. So we will stand in recess at 12:24 p.m. Compensation. I want to give this topic its due, but we certainly would appreciate any expedited presentation and conversation we can have. Go right ahead. Ms. Tammy McDonald is going to walk us through this, this workshop item.
Yes, thank you. We felt that it was important to provide fundamental compensation information as we move forward with the budget process for FY23 and develop short and long-term goals. Our faculty and staff are vital to our students' success. Without our exceptional employees, the mission of the college could not be met. Sorry, the delay. We will have an overview of the following topics: compensation types, employee classifications, pay schedules, pay increase history, employer paid benefits, and then we'll go over a timeline and next steps. When you think of compensation, typically you think about what will I get paid? Well, there are all types of compensation. So today we want to look at the full compensation package, and that includes direct compensation, which is wages paid, indirect, which is employer paid benefits, and then intangible, which are work-life balance, training, and development opportunities. When we do make various types of pay decisions, we look at some factors. It could be market pay, it could be internal equity, what pay grade is a position in, available funds, performance, working conditions, and of course the knowledge, skills, and abilities that is required to perform a particular job. First, we'll start with full-time faculty classifications. By policy, the board establishes salary schedules for each component. Tenure and tenure-track faculty have 4 components. We have the common base, which is currently set at $52,000. That is at an entry level of a bachelor's degree or an associate's degree with related work experience. Then we have an education component, which if you have hours towards your next level degree past your bachelor's, it pays a per hour rate, a cumulative up to when you meet that next level, either a master's or a master's in fine arts, then of course your doctorate degree. And it provides you with those cumulative increases. So if you obtain your master's, then you'd be paid an additional $2,438. If you go on and obtain your doctorate, the cumulative amount for those two would be $8,648. That would be those two combined. There's also a rank component. When faculty come in, they're at an instructor rate. Unless they come in with a doctorate, then they can come in at an assistant professor rate, but typically it's an instructor rate. So if you do promote in rank and you promote to an assistant professor, then you can receive additional compensation of $2,560. And all of these are cumulative. So if you work through your promotions and you get promoted to full professor, then the accumulated value of reaching full professor would be $11,661 in additional pay. We have a year of experience. There is no cap on this year of experience. Previously, there was a cap at 18 years, but that cap was removed in FY15. We have unranked assistant instructors, and they have 2 pay components out of the 4. So the pay components associated with unranked assistant instructors are the common base and the experience, which is the $52,000 and then the $829. We have term, or what we call temporary faculty. We have term instructors. They have 2 pay components, the common base and the education. And then we have term or temporary assistant instructors, and they have the 1 pay component. Some work we've done previously for faculty compensation. In FY14-15, administration worked with faculty council to create some multi-year goals. One of those goals was to take the common base up to $50,000 within 5 years. That was achieved in FY19-20. I believe at the time we started it was around $41,000 or a little over. And another goal was to be ranked in the top 10% of the Texas Community College Teachers Association annual survey. This survey, all 50 community colleges in Texas do participate. In a couple of slides, we will be looking at a column that's titled Average Increase. Considering the multiple components and the structure of faculty compensation, and that all components do not affect every classification of a faculty member, we're trying to come up with a data point. And that data point was the average increase. And it is calculated by using the increase to common base and the increase if the year of experience pay is approved for that year. So those two things together, if that was approved by the board for a budget year, then that was taken as a percent of the average compensation from that TCCTA survey. And we'll be reviewing both of those components in the next few slides. So here's the benchmark information. We started using the TCCTA survey in 13-14, and at that time, Del Mar College was ranked 17th out of 50 community colleges in Texas. So we were ranked number 17. If you look at our current year, we are ranked number 6 out of 50. But if you look at the history that I've given you, 4 out of the 8 years that I've provided you, we have met that goal of being in the top 10%, which would be ranked in the top 5. I think that it's also important to know, because we did talk about peer groups earlier. Of our peer group, we are ranked the highest out of our peer group at number 6. The next below us would be Central Texas, which is ranked 13. And from there it goes all the way down to ranking of 43. So we are the highest in our peer group in this ranking for average compensation. So this year, for 21-22, the average compensation of our faculty, and this is their 9-month contract, this does not include summer if they teach or overload, it's their 9-month contract, was $70,340. The ranking number 5, which is McLennan this year, they have like about $320 more. So it's $70,661. So we're right close to that number 5. It's important to note too, there are other factors. Their tenure or their years of service for that average was 15, where ours was 10. Okay. And I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. So if there are questions, I'm going to take it that you're going to stop me along the way. Thank you. This next slide will show us some history of salary increases. And I did want to note again that you are seeing the column that's titled average percent increase. Again, that is an average, and it's based off of if the board approved in the budget process the year experience and the common base. If those were increased, that's what that average percent is based off of. Now, of course, within the average, you are going to have some that receive lower than the average and higher than the average, because it is an average. So we'll just look at this year's information. So this year, when right now, there was a 4% increase to the common base. The board approved that, which equaled $2,000. The year of experience pay was approved. There was no adjustments or no change to the schedule for the rank component or the education component. With those increases that were approved, it was about a $1.28 million investment in our employees for salary and benefits. Now, I would like to note under that column, if there were faculty that did receive promotion in rank, that amount is included in the $1.28 million. Okay. So the average increase was 4%. And then the last column will show you the consumer price index for the calendar year, and it's a national average. So the calendar year for this first row would be for calendar year 21. Of course, we know that is an anomaly because of the pandemic. We know that we are still feeling those effects. But I think if you go ahead and review, I'm not going to go through line by line because I know we need to cover this, but you have the information in front of you. If you go through, we've done a good job on taking care of our employees and staying in step with the consumer price index. Now we'll move on to full-time staff classifications. By policy, the CEO shall approve salary schedules for full-time non-faculty employees. Our salary schedules are structured with pay grades based on many factors related to the position responsibilities. For exempt employees who are salary, which are not eligible for overtime, we have 2 schedules. We have an exempt schedule, and then we have a separate schedule for information technology exempt employees. All schedules have pay grades, and within those pay grades, there's an established minimum and maximum annual salary for those positions. We have non-exempt, which are hourly employees. They are eligible for overtime. We have 3 pay schedules. There's a non-exempt schedule, there's a separate schedule for what we call skilled craft, like your HVAC, electrician, those types. And then we also, information technology hourly is in progress. It was actually finalized and approved yesterday. So that has been completed. So the hourly IT employees now have a separate pay schedule. And again, the non-exempt, just like the exempt, they have pay grades, and within each schedule, it establishes a minimum and a maximum hourly rate for those positions based on the responsibilities of the job. Here's a salary increase history for staff. Current year, we invested about $1 million into salary and benefits for staff. There was an across-the-board increase of 4%. And then, of course, the CPI is the same calendar year average. I think it's important to note that the college administration has engaged Weaver for an advisory special project to conduct an internal review of our staff compensation structures. And that will also include, we have asked them to look at what are the best practices for our benchmarks. We have a couple of them that we use, but we want to make sure, though, that is a best practice, what we're using. So we're getting an external look to come look inside to kind of review our compensation structures for staff, for exempt and non-exempt. Our part-time employees, which is defined as less than 20 hours a week, those increases are considered during the budgeting process. Adjunct faculty, the last time that pay schedule was increased was in FY 15-16. And then in FY 21-22, from that same TCCTA salary survey, and I do have one typo to correct, Del Mar College was ranked 8th out of 50, not 6th, for part-time instructor pay. And they base this off of if you have a master's degree teaching a 3-credit class. So we ranked 8 out of 50, not 6. Our part-time hourly, we have regular part-time hourly. There's no pay schedule, but what we do is we try to find a comparator in a full-time position, and then we try to appropriately place an hourly rate to that part-time position, that part-time person. And then we also have what we call skilled trainers, which are for instruction. And skills trainers have a set minimum rate, and that is set by policy. It's a minimum rate, but you can pay above the minimum. Positions that are not funded by the college are student workers through work study. It could be federal or state. And we also have grant positions. We have about 60, between the two exempt, non-exempt, about 60 grant positions. And those are funded by grant budgets and specifications from the grant. An important part of our total compensation package is our employer-paid benefits. Full-time employees receive an estimated benefit equivalent to about 33% of their salary. So for example, for every dollar of a wage, an employee receives an additional 33 cents in an employer-paid benefit. Examples of some of those benefits are insurance premiums that are paid by the college. And we do, on some of these, get state appropriations for that, but it is considered employer-paid. The premium for employee medical is 100% paid by the college. And then half of a dependent cost, if you cover your children or full family or spouse, half of that is paid by the college. There's a long-term disability insurance paid by the college. There's optional life insurance, which is one time your annual wage, a basic term life of $5,000, and then, of course, Medicare at the 1.45% of wages. All of that is employer paid. We also have our retirement benefits. For the Teachers Retirement System, or TRS, and the Optional Retirement Plan, ORP, those contributions that the college makes, and again, we get some state appropriations for this, those are set by the state. Those percentages are set by the state, and it's of eligible wages. Then we also participate in Social Security, and it's 6.2% up to the IRS maximum limit of $147,000 of wages a year. It's important to note that 21 out of 50 of the Texas community colleges participate in Social Security. And I'll give you an example of why that does make a difference. If we have someone that retires from the college and they're going to draw their pension annuity, and the college participating in Social Security, and that employee draws their own Social Security, or they draw a survivor benefit into Social Security, your Social Security benefits will not be reduced because the college participates. You are employed by a public institution that participates in Social Security. Whereas if you were employed by one that does not participate in Social Security, it could have an impact on your benefit when you do draw your pension from the college plan. It could have an impact, it would reduce your Social Security benefit. There's a lot of different variations for that, but it would have the impact of reducing your Social Security benefit. But again, that does not apply because we do participate in Social Security. So in a sense, we do have two plans, retirement plans for our employees. We have generous paid time off through vacation, sick, personal leave, jury duty, campus closures, and holidays. We also have other employer-paid benefits like tuition exemption for credit and non-credit courses for full-time employees and their eligible dependents after they've been employed for 1 year. We also have professional development opportunities like conference attendance or like our NGLA, our Next Generation Leadership Academy program that we sponsor here at the college. So now that we've reviewed the faculty and staff compensation, let's look at our current timeline and the next steps that aligns with our FY23 budget process. So in February, we did some prep work for the budget and for future budgets. A college-wide compensation committee has been created to serve in an advisory capacity. They will undertake short-term and long-term goals. Short-term, we're going to review and advise on the FY23 budget. Long-term, we will develop multi-year strategies for each employee classification and pay structure and prepare for a conversion to our new ERP anthology. I met with the College Council representatives, all 5 of them, and reviewed similar data to what we've just reviewed today. We discussed the new college-wide compensation committee, and I asked them to provide me with names of participants to represent their councils on the college-wide committee. So the membership has been established. So next steps. March, the college-wide compensation committee will have their first meeting. Administration will continue to work on the special advisory project with Weaver. So they are working on the staff compensation analysis. In April, the committee will meet again. And we are anticipating presenting the board with a summary analysis of that staff special project work from Weaver. So we do anticipate that being ready in April. And then May, June, and July, the college-wide compensation committee will meet as needed. We will review the compensation data and analysis. We will review budget, and we will work on compensation recommendations. Any questions?
Any questions or feedback for Ms. McDonald? Thank you very much. We appreciate the background as we get into these conversations in the next few months.
That's it.
All right, we do not have closed session related to our workshop, so at this time, I'm going to adjourn our workshop at 1:16 p.m.